Never go to the farm, Catherine. Promise me. Those were my husband's words. Quiet, firm, and carrying a kind of fear I'd never heard from him before. Joshua wasn't a man who begged. After 24 years of marriage, I knew every crease of his smile, every tone in his voice. But that night, his eyes carried something I couldn't name, something close to dread. When he died, those words didn't die with him. They followed me like a whisper in the dark. I'm Catherine Mitchell, 52, a high school English teacher from Minneapolis. Or, as Joshua liked to tease, the one who always needs a plan before she breathes. I'd always believed that love could be built on stability. That if you kept your home warm and your calendar full, nothing bad could surprise you. But grief doesn't care about order. It tears right through it. And sometimes at night, I still wake up hearing him. Just that one line. Never go to the farm. And I answer back into the dark. Why not, Joshua? What were you so afraid I'd find? 2 weeks after the funeral, I sat across from his attorney, Mr. Winters, in a room that smelled faintly of leather and dust. The world was still spinning without him, even if I was in single quotes T-mer. Winters was a precise man. Silver hair, spotless desk, a habit of adjusting his tie every time he delivered something unpleasant. That morning, he did it 3 times. There's one last matter, Mrs. Mitchell, he said gently, sliding a small box toward me. Your husband left this for you. Inside lay a brass key, old but heavy, attached to a maple leaf cane rubbed smooth from years of touch. Beneath it, an envelope. My name, Catherine, written in Joshua's careful script. My breath caught. He left this? Yes, Mr. Winters said softly. He also instructed me to inform you of a property he purchased 3 years ago. Maple Creek Farm, in Alberta, Canada. It now belongs entirely to you. I stared at him, stunned. Joshua bought that place back. He never even wanted to talk about it. He repurchased it quietly, the lawyer continued. Paid in full. All taxes are cleared for 5 years. He adjusted his tie again. He wanted you to know only after his passing. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The word farm alone felt too heavy. I opened the envelope, my fingers trembling. My dearest Catherine, if you're reading this, then I've left you too soon. The farm you've heard me mention all these years is yours now. I made you promise not to go once, and I kept you from it for reasons I'll explain when you get there. Please, visit it once before you decide what to do. You'll find something waiting for you. With all my love, Joshua. I read it twice, then a 3rd time, as if the meaning might change. He'd forbidden me from going. Then, in death, handed me the key. I wanted to believe it was just sentimentality, a man's way of leaving something behind. But no part of Joshua's life had ever been impulsive. If he'd hidden this, it was because there was something there. I closed my eyes, clutching the brass key until it pressed into my palm. If Joshua left secrets, I whispered, I need to face them, not hide behind them. Mr. Winters was still talking about documents, taxes, signatures, but I barely heard him. The room seemed to tilt, everything narrowing down to that one truth. There was a place my husband didn't want me to see. And now he was gone. When I got home, the house felt colder than before. I placed the key on the dining table and stared at it for what felt like hours. The maple leaf charm glinted under the lamplight, like a heartbeat waiting to be noticed. Then I heard something, a sound so faint I almost missed it. A whisper, or maybe a memory, drifting through the quiet. Never go to the farm. I turned toward the empty hallway. I'm sorry, Joshua, I said aloud, but I have to. The next morning, I packed a small suitcase, booked a flight to Calgary, and rented a car. The entire drive north felt unreal. Endless highways, forests fading into rolling fields, golden under a lowering sun. By the time I reached the gates marked Maple Creek Farm, dusk had fallen. The metal letters gleamed faintly, the same maple leaf emblem etched into the iron. I gripped the steering wheel, my pulse racing. This was it, the forbidden place, the secret corner of my husband's life. The key turned easily in the lock. The gates creaked open. The gravel road wound up a gentle hill toward a house that looked nothing like the haunted childhood farm Joshua once described. It was grand, elegant, surrounded by acres of turning maple trees. Whoever had tended to it had loved it deeply. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cedar and soap, freshly cleaned, recently used. My footsteps echoed softly across polished floors, and then I saw them. Paintings, sculptures, photographs, all of horses, everywhere. Horses in full gallop, horses grazing, horses mid-jump frozen in time. My throat tightened. Joshua had filled this place with my passion, with me. Every birthday, every quiet wish I'd buried to be practical, he'd somehow turned into this. I stepped closer to a painting of a black stallion beneath stormy skies, one I'd admired years ago in a museum. A tear slipped down my cheek. That's when I noticed the desk. A single silver laptop sat closed, a red rose resting on top. I reached for it, but before I could touch it, the crunch of tires on gravel echoed outside. Headlights swept across the window. A black SUV rolled to a stop behind my car. 3 men stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, each one with the same sharp jawline I'd kissed on my husband for half my life. His brothers, and from their grim expressions, I knew they weren't here to comfort the widow. Somewhere inside this house lay Joshua's secret, and his brothers were here to claim it before I did. The first knock shook the house so hard it felt like the walls exhaled. "Mrs. Mitchell," a voice called, deep and firm. "We know you're in there." I froze in the hallway, the echo of the sound trembling in my chest. My pulse thudded in my ears as I peeked through the lace curtain. 3 men stood on the porch, tall, dark coats against the fading light. Robert, Alan, David, the Mitchell brothers. Robert, the eldest, stood at the front, his posture sharp, commanding. Alan hovered behind him, cell phone in hand, all slick smiles and calculation. David lingered furthest back, arms crossed, his eyes scanning the house. The quiet one, the observer, Joshua's brothers, the ones he never wanted me to meet. Joshua used to shut down whenever their names came up. Just a tightening of the jaw, a muttered "not now, cat," and the conversation would end. Now I understood why. Even from this distance, the air around them felt wrong. "Mrs. Mitchell," Robert called again, louder this time. "It's Robert, Joshua's family. We just want a word." I backed away from the door, heart hammering. Maybe Joshua's warning hadn't been about the farm at all. Maybe it was about them. Silence fell outside, thick and waiting. I turned toward the desk, toward the laptop. Joshua's letter had told me to find it. And maybe, if I was lucky, it would tell me what he couldn't. The screen blinked awake as I lifted the lid. One folder sat in the center of the desktop. For Catherine. My fingers trembled. I clicked. A row of videos appeared. The first one titled "If You're Watching This." I hit play. Joshua's face filled the screen. Alive, strong, impossibly close. "Hello, Cat," he said softly, that same gentle smile curling at the edges of his mouth. "If you're watching this, It means I didn't make it. And it also means you came to the farm. My throat tightened. His voice felt like a memory brushing against my cheek. I made you promise not to come here because I thought it would keep you safe. But if you're here, it means I ran out of time to explain. So listen carefully. He leaned forward, eyes glinting in the sunlight pouring behind him. There's something buried in this land, something my brothers will want. You can't trust them, Catherine. Not any of them. They'll come smiling, but their smiles are knives. A soft whimper escaped me before I could stop it. I wish I could have told you in person, he continued. But I was sick, Cat. I've been sick for years. The words struck like a blow. He paused, lowering his eyes. Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It's genetic. I didn't tell you because I didn't want our last years to be hospital visits and worry. I wanted to give you peace. But in doing that, I may have left you with chaos. Tears stung my eyes, and suddenly, memories rushed back. A quiet walk by the lake last spring, when Joshua had stopped to rest, pressing a hand to his chest. Just the cold air, he'd said with that same stubborn smile. Now I knew better. Outside, gravel crunched. I flinched, peering through the curtain again. The brothers were still there. Robert pacing, Alan on the phone, David staring straight at the window, straight at me. Joshua's voice drew me back. In the bottom drawer of this desk, he said, you'll find proof the farm belongs to you. Keep it close. They'll lie. They'll threaten. They'll twist the truth. But those papers, they're your shield. I reached down and pulled open the drawer. A single blue folder waited inside, heavy and thick. Inside, the title deed, notarized and signed. My name, mine alone. Before I could breathe, a hard bang jolted through the door, double quotes Mrs. Mitchell. Robert's voice thundered. We're not leaving until we talk. Joshua's voice cut through the panic. If they've come already, do not open the door. Call for help if you must. And remember, you're not trespassing. You're home. The screen flickered, then froze mid-frame, his face caught between fear and love. Then, a sudden flash of red and blue outside the window. For a heartbeat. I thought it was a reflection, but then came the siren. I stumbled toward the porch window. A police cruiser had pulled up behind the brothers' SUV, lights washing the front yard in strobing color. A sharp knock followed. Different this time. Firm. Official. Mrs. Mitchell, RCMP. Please open the door. I hesitated, Joshua's last words whispering in my ear. You're home. I opened the door slowly. A young constable stood there. Nervous eyes, one hand brushing the edge of his radio. Behind him, the brothers stood with forced politeness stretched tight across their faces. Evening. Ma'am, the constable said, these gentlemen reported an ownership dispute. I just need to verify a few details. Robert stepped forward, voice oily. Catherine, we didn't want to involve anyone. But this property's been in our family for generations. We simply need to ensure things are handled correctly. Of course, I said evenly, holding the blue folder close to my chest. Then let's start with this. I handed it over. The officer flipped through the papers, scanning each page carefully. These are official, he said after a moment. Filed, dated, notarized. The property's registered in Mrs. Mitchell's name. Robert's jaw tightened. That can't be, until a court decides otherwise. The constable interrupted. You gentlemen have no grounds to enter or remove her from the premises. Alan tried to recover. We'll see about that. You will, I said quietly, meeting his glare. The constable closed the folder and handed it back to me. For now, Ma'am, you're free to stay. I'd recommend locking up and calling if they return. I nodded. Thank you, officer. Robert's mask slipped as they turned to leave. His words came low, almost a growl. This isn't finished, Catherine. You don't know what you've walked into. I'm starting to, I whispered. Their SUV roared to life, tires spraying gravel as it tore down the hill. The police cruiser followed, its red lights fading into the dark. Silence returned, almost too fast. I locked the door, chest heaving. The house creaked softly, the wind pressing against the windows like a warning. When I stepped back to the window, something caught my eye. In the dirt near the gate, illuminated by the porch light, were fresh tire tracks, and beside them, a single pair of boot prints that didn't match the brothers. Someone else had been here, watching. I turned back toward the desk. The laptop still glowed faintly, Joshua's frozen face caught in mid-frame. My tears had dried, leaving only a strange steadiness behind. I wasn't just his widow anymore. I was the keeper of his secret, Ray Hook. Joshua warned me his brothers would come, but he never said they'd already planned to take everything, including me, down with them. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the old farmhouse felt like it was breathing beside me, slow, uneven, alive. I kept the hallway light on, my husband's brass key in one hand, the blue folder in the other. Each shadow on the wall looked like a memory waiting to move by dawn. Fog had swallowed the world outside. The orchard behind the farmhouse shimmered in pale gray, tree trunks dissolving into mist. I brewed a pot of coffee just to fill the silence, but when I lifted the cup to my lips, I saw it. Movement among the trees. A man, tall, broad shoulders, a hat pulled low. He wasn't rushing, just standing there between the maples, half hidden. Watching the house, my hand trembled as I set the cup down. The brothers. Back already? Before I could reach for my phone, he lifted one hand, a slow, deliberate gesture. Not threatening, not waving, just acknowledgement. Then he turned and vanished deeper into the fog. Every sensible part of me said lock the doors. Call the police. Stay inside. But curiosity, that same wild pull that had dragged me here in the first place, won again. I slipped on my coat and boots, stepped out into the morning chill, and let the door close behind me. The cold was sharp, biting. Fog clung to my hair and lashes, tasting like metal. The orchard stretched wide and endless, rows of old maple trees fading into pale white. I followed the faint footprints pressed into the damp grass, the sound of my boots crunching the frost. Each step made the silence deeper. The trail led past a small wooden shed, its roof slanted and moss-covered, and toward an old red barn at the edge of the property. Its wide doors were shut tight, padlocked, but the lock was new, shiny, polished. Someone had been here recently. I pulled the brass key from my pocket, though I knew it couldn't fit. Still, I tried. It turned smoothly. The padlock clicked open. A soft breath escaped me as I pushed the door. The hinges groaned, and a wave of cool, dusty air rolled out. Inside, slivers of light spilled through the broken boards, catching on dust and cobwebs. The air smelled faintly of paint and cedar, and everywhere, stacked against the walls, leaning on easels, hanging half-finished, were paintings, horses, wild, free, in every color of dawn and storm. Their manes looked alive, as if the wind inside them hadn't stopped blowing. I walked closer, brushing my fingers over the dry strokes. Each canvas carried the same signature, small and looping in the bottom corner. I whispered it aloud. Who are you? Behind me, a floorboard creaked. I froze. The air shifted. Someone else was breathing slowly. I turned. A man stood in the doorway, framed by fog and sunlight. He raised his hands slightly. "Don't scream." He was older than I'd expected. Late 50s, weathered skin, gray in his beard. His flannel shirt was frayed, but his watch gleamed under the light. "To fine for a man living rough. You must be Catherine," he said softly. "I'm Ethan Moore, Joshua's friend." I kept my distance. "You knew my husband." He nodded, his voice rough with something like regret. "Since we were boys. We worked this land together once, before his family tore it apart. When Joshua bought the place back, I helped him fix what I could." My heart pounded. "You've been here this whole time?" "I was watching from the ridge last night," he said, answering the unspoken question. "Saw the police leave. They don't look up that far." I studied him. "You were watching me?" "Making sure you were all right," he replied simply. "The brothers don't play fair." "Then maybe you can tell me what they want," I said. Ethan's gaze drifted to the floor. "Joshua found something on this land, something in the soil, something the companies would kill for. He tried to hide it. They want it back." The words sent a chill through me. "What kind of something?" He hesitated. "Doesn't matter what it is. What matters is, your husband thought he could protect you by keeping it buried." I looked around at the paintings, at the light, the beauty, the peace Joshua must have found here. "He told you about me?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Said you were the artist between the two of you." He said painting calmed his heart. That broke something inside me. I could almost hear Joshua saying it. That shy, half laugh when he pretended not to care how much it meant to me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Ethan nodded toward a corner where a small unfinished canvas leaned against the wall. "He wanted that one to be yours. Said you'd know what to do with it when you found it." Without really thinking, I picked it up. The edges of the horse were still sketched in charcoal. Wild, incomplete. "Then I'll keep it safe," I said quietly. Ethan's eyes softened. "Good. But be careful, Catherine. The brothers won't stop. They'll send people, lawyers, maybe worse. And not everyone who says they're helping you will be on your side." Something about the way he said it made me uneasy. Not his words, but the weight behind them. That watch caught the light again, gold against rough skin. I finally asked, "Why are you helping me?" He looked at me for a long time before answering. "Because Joshua once saved my life, and because you're doing what he said you would, staying." Then he stepped out into the fog and was gone. I stood there for a moment, the silence folding back in. Somewhere in the distance, a branch snapped. Or maybe that was just the fog playing tricks. When I finally left the barn, I hid the unfinished canvas beneath my coat. A small act, but it felt like defiance, like claiming a piece of the secret that had started all this. Back at the house, the porch light flickered in the mist. Something white fluttered near the door, an envelope, my name written across the front. Catherine. The paper smelled faintly of smoke. Inside was a single note. "You shouldn't have opened the barn." My hands shook as I stared out into the orchard. The fog had thickened again, swallowing the trees whole, and for the first time, I realized someone out there wasn't just watching me. They were warning me. Someone knew I'd been in that barn, and they wanted me to stop digging. But I'd already turned the key, and there's no locking a secret once it's open. By late afternoon, the fog had lifted, but the unease hadn't. Every sound carried a weight to it. The groan of the porch boards, the ticking of the kitchen clock, even the faint hum of wind moving through the trees. The note lay on the counter beside my untouched lunch. "You shouldn't have opened the barn." Those 6 words looped in my head like a heartbeat that wouldn't slow down. I tried to tell myself it was a prank, that one of Joshua's brothers had left it. But something about the handwriting felt too familiar, too deliberate. Whoever wrote it wanted me to feel watched. And they'd succeeded. The sun was already dipping low, painting the fields in rust and gold. I decided to clear my mind by walking the perimeter of the property, something Joshua used to do when he was deep in thought. Maybe the air would help, or maybe I just needed to see that no one was hiding in the trees. The land stretched for acres. Maple Creek was beautiful in that lonely, almost tragic way, vast, open, and full of secrets that refused to stay buried. The farm itself sat on a gentle slope overlooking a small creek that glittered like glass. In the fading light, halfway down the hill, I noticed tire tracks. Fresh ones, too deep to be from the brothers' SUV. Whoever they belonged to had come after. I crouched to touch the ground. The soil was still damp from morning dew. Whoever it was, they'd been here less than an hour ago. A shiver ran through me. By the time I made it back to the house, dusk was falling. The world had gone quiet. That eerie kind of silence that feels like the world is holding its breath. I locked every door, drew every curtain, and double-checked the windows. The brass key sat heavy in my pocket, a reminder that I was never really alone here. In the living room, the laptop still sat open on Joshua's desk. The last video had frozen mid-frame. His face paused in that soft half-smile. I'd only seen the first half of his message before everything went wrong. My finger hovered over the mouse. If I'm gone, and you've come this far, you deserve to know the rest. His voice echoed in my memory. I clicked play. The video resumed. Joshua leaned back in his chair, eyes weary but steady. If I'm being honest, Kat, I didn't just buy this land for love or nostalgia. I bought it because of what's underneath. There's an old mining vein running through the North Ridge. But it's not what everyone thinks. The reports. He hesitated, glancing off-screen. You'll find them when it's time. Just promise me you won't trust anyone claiming to act on my behalf unless they use the code phrase. Maple runs red, I told Ethan. But if he's not there, the video stuttered, flickered, then cut to black. My stomach knotted. Maple runs red. It sounded like something out of a bad spy movie. But Joshua wasn't a man who played games. I leaned closer to the screen, replaying the moment, trying to catch the edge of his words before it glitched. That's when I saw it. Just for a second, reflected in the laptop's glossy frame. Movement in the window behind me. A silhouette of someone standing outside. My heart lurched. I spun around. Nothing. Only the reflection of my own fear. But then came the knock, 3 sharp raps. Firm, confident, not like the brothers. Not like Ethan. I stayed perfectly still. The knock came again. Mrs. Mitchell? A voice, low, smooth, official. I'm Deputy Carson, Alberta RCMP. May I speak with you a moment? I hesitated, then moved to the door, peering through the side window. A tall man stood on the porch, broad-shouldered, uniform pressed, badge glinting faintly under the porch light. He looked every bit the part. Still, my gut whispered caution. What's this about? I asked through the door. Just follow-up questions regarding the property claim your husband's family filed. Nothing to worry about. I didn't move. The constable who came yesterday didn't mention a follow-up. He smiled, polite, patient. That was Constable Brinks. I'm his superior. Just need to verify a few signatures. That's all. My hand hovered over the lock. Joshua's warning echoed like thunder. Don't trust anyone unless they use the code phrase. I swallowed hard. Before I open the door, could you tell me the code my husband gave for verification? A pause. Barely half a breath. But enough. Ma'am? He said slowly. My blood went cold. Wrong answer, I whispered. He frowned. Mrs. Mitchell, I just need a moment of your time. I stepped back. You can speak to my lawyer instead. The shift in his tone was immediate. The warmth vanished. I'd advise you not to make this difficult. Something heavy slammed against the door. Once. Twice. Then silence. Mrs. Mitchell, he said, voice lower now, almost calm. If you won't cooperate, we'll get what we came for another way. I bolted for the phone in the kitchen. Deadline. No signal. When I looked up, headlights flashed through the curtains. 2 cars now, idling at the gate. A voice behind me made me jump. Don't open it. I turned. Ethan stood in the back doorway, soaked in shadow. His jacket was wet. Mud streaked up his sleeves. How did you? Back path through the orchard. He said quickly. I saw the cars. They're not police. Then who are they? He moved closer, his eyes scanning the window. Robert's men. Most likely. They've used fake badges before. They'll try to get in, grab what they think Joshua hid. I took a step toward him. How do you know all this? Ethan didn't answer immediately. His jaw clenched. Because I've dealt with them before. Outside, the engines cut off. Car doors opened. We need to move, he said. Now. He grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the back of the house. We slipped out through the kitchen door and into the orchard, the cold air slapping my face. From behind us, I heard the front door crack, wood splintering under force. They're inside. I gasped. Keep running, Ethan said. Down toward the creek. There's a path that leads to the caretaker's cabin. We can lock up there. Branches scraped my coat as we ran through the trees. I risked a glance back. Figures with flashlights moving through the farmhouse windows. Beams slicing through the dark. We reached the creek, the water reflecting the last traces of dying light. Ethan led me across the narrow bridge, his hand gripping mine like steel. By the time we reached the cabin, I was shaking, part fear, part exhaustion. He shut the door behind us, bolting it tight. The small space smelled of smoke and pine. Ethan moved to the window, watching the hill. They won't search long. They'll think you ran into town, but they'll be back. I slumped into a chair, the adrenaline fading fast. How long have you been keeping watch, Ethan? He didn't look at me when he answered. Since the day Joshua died. I stared at him, realization dawning slow and heavy. You knew something was going to happen, didn't you? He finally met my eyes. He told me if he didn't make it, someone would come for you, for what he found. I just didn't expect them to move this fast. Outside, headlights flickered once more on the ridge, then went dark. I pulled Joshua's brass key from my pocket and turned it in my hand. The metal was warm from my skin. What exactly did he find, Ethan? I whispered. He hesitated, his voice low. Something that could change everything. The wind howled through the trees, rattling the cabin walls. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't just fighting for Joshua's memory anymore. I was fighting to stay alive long enough to uncover what he died protecting. They'd come for the land tonight, but it wasn't the land they wanted. It was whatever Joshua had buried beneath it. And now, they knew I was getting close. The morning came too bright, too quiet. I woke in the caretaker's cabin to the sound of birdsong and the faint hiss of wind slipping through the cracks in the walls. My head throbbed, my body heavy from a night of half-sleep. Every dream had ended the same way, Joshua's voice whispering, Maple runs red. Ethan was already up, pacing near the window with a mug of coffee in one hand, his eyes sharp and restless. Outside, the world looked peaceful again. No headlights, no strangers, just endless fields and drifting fog. But peace here was a trick. They're gone for now, he said without turning. Left before sunrise. I watched them drive off toward the main road. I rubbed my temples. You're sure they won't come back? Oh, they'll be back, he said, but not without a plan. They didn't find what they wanted. His words hung heavy between us. I sat up, pulling the blanket tighter around me. You said Joshua found something buried out there. You need to tell me what that is, Ethan. No more riddles. He exhaled slowly, the steam from his cup curling through the air. It's not that simple. Joshua never told me everything, but I know this. There's a file, a digital one, a kind of data he didn't want his brothers to see. Geological scans, maybe, or something from an old project he worked on before he left engineering. He hid it somewhere safe. Said only you could find it. I frowned. Only me? Why? Ethan turned then, meeting my eyes. Because he said you'd listen differently. That you'd notice what everyone else ignored. I didn't know what that meant. But as his words sank in, something inside me shifted. That same quiet intuition that had drawn me into the barn. That had made me recognize danger before it reached the door. I stood, running my hands through my hair. If it's digital, maybe it's on the laptop. Already checked, he said. What you saw last night was the only folder. Unless, his gaze drifted toward the window. Unless there's a second drive. I blinked. You think he hid it physically? Ethan nodded. Joshua was old school. He'd never risk keeping something that valuable online. The thought made my pulse quicken. Joshua loved puzzles. He'd leave trails, clues only I'd catch. And now that memory felt like a promise. I glanced toward the farmhouse on the distant hill. Then I need to go back. Ethan's head snapped up. Not yet. It's too soon. They might still be watching. They can watch, I said, my voice steady. It's my house. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then he sighed. At least let me check the perimeter first. He grabbed his coat and disappeared through the back door. While he was gone, I poured myself a cup of the bitter coffee he'd brewed, trying to ignore the way my hands shook. On the small table by the window sat Joshua's brass key and the folded note from the night before. The edges were smudged now, faint fingerprints pressed into the paper. I couldn't tell if they were mine. I turned it over again and again, searching for any clue, any hidden mark. Then I noticed it, faint indentations on the back, like something had been written over it before the note itself. I tilted it toward the light. 3 letters, barely visible. MRR Maple runs red. A shiver ran down my spine. Joshua had left his phrase here, too, a warning layered beneath the threat. Ethan returned 20 minutes later, breath visible in the cold air. No signs of anyone. The road's clear. I nodded, grabbed the key, and we started up the hill toward the farmhouse. The closer we got, the more my pulse raced. The place looked untouched, the door still cracked from where they'd forced it. Windows reflecting the early light. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cedar and smoke. Stay close, Ethan murmured. The house was eerily still. I could almost hear the echo of last night, the crash of the door, the voices, the fear. But underneath it all, there was something else. A presence. Joshua's presence. I walked straight to the desk. The laptop sat where I'd left it. Closed now, the red rose still across the top. I ran a hand over the wood surface, feeling for anything uneven. Then, near the back corner. I heard it, a faint metallic click, a hidden compartment. I slid the panel aside, and there it was, a small silver flash drive tucked neatly into a groove. My heart leapt. "Ethan," I whispered, holding it up. He stepped closer, eyes widening. "That's it." I plugged it into the laptop. The screen blinked to life, and a single folder appeared. MRR_01. My throat went dry. Maple runs red. Inside the folder was one video file and a set of encrypted documents. I clicked the video. Joshua appeared again, this time in a different setting, outside, near the orchard. His voice was steady, but his eyes were tired. "If you found this, Kat, then you're closer than I ever got. What's under Maple Creek isn't just mineral, it's experimental. Something the company buried, literally. They used this land for testing before the sale. The others found out too late, and they've been trying to reclaim it ever since. But it's not theirs anymore. It's ours. Protect it, and whatever you do, don't let them dig." The video cut out. I sat frozen. "Testing? What kind of testing?" Ethan's face went pale. He worked for Calverton Engineering before retiring, right? They were under investigation a few years back. Unregulated waste disposal. Toxic compounds. The words made my stomach drop. "You mean Joshua bought land that's poisoned?" Ethan looked grim. "He didn't buy it to own it. He bought it to keep anyone else from touching it." The sound of an engine outside made us both jump. Ethan moved fast, rushing to the window. "Truck," he hissed. 2 men inside. Not the brothers. Someone else. I yanked the flash drive from the laptop and shoved it into my pocket. "We need to leave." He nodded, but something in his voice changed. Lower. Urgent. "Go through the barn. I'll hold them off." I froze. "Hold them off? Ethan, what are you talking about?" He was already moving toward the door, grabbing a crowbar from the corner. "I'll buy you time. Get to the cabin and lock yourself in." "Ethan." He turned back once, his face shadowed. "If I'm not back by nightfall, don't come looking. Just trust me." Before I could speak, he was gone. Through the window, I saw him stride across the yard toward the oncoming truck. The vehicle slowed. Doors opened. Voices rose. Then shouting. I backed away from the window, the flash drive clutched tight in my hand. Every instinct screamed to run. But before I could move, the laptop screen flickered again. Another message appeared, one I hadn't opened. MRR_O to final. Joshua's face appeared one last time. "Kat, if you're seeing this, you've learned what I couldn't say aloud. They'll come for the land, but the truth isn't buried under it. It's inside what I left you. You'll know when to use it. Just remember who you can trust." The video ended abruptly, replaced by a single line of text. "Not everyone who helps you is on your side." Outside, a gunshot split the air. My heart stopped. I ran to the window, but the fog had rolled in again, swallowing everything. The truck, the yard, Ethan. All that remained was the echo of that single shot, hanging heavy over Maple Creek. Ethan had vanished into the fog, and the men who came for him weren't leaving. Now I had Joshua's final message, and the truth burning in my pocket. But I couldn't tell any more who was protecting me, and who was hunting me. The gunshot still rang in my head long after the echo faded. For a few heartbeats, I couldn't move. I just stood there at the window, staring into the fog that had swallowed everything outside the farmhouse. The barn, the trees, the road. The silence that followed was worse than the shot itself. "Ethan." I whispered his name like it might bring him back, but nothing answered. Not a sound. The wind picked up, whispering through the cracks of the old walls, carrying the faint scent of smoke. My stomach twisted. Smoke meant fire, or gunpowder. I grabbed the brass key, the flash drive, and Joshua's blue folder, shoving them into my coat pocket. Then I took one last look at the laptop on the desk, its black screen now reflecting only my pale, trembling face, before heading for the back door. The fog pressed against me like a living thing when I stepped outside. My breath came out in sharp clouds as I followed the faint path toward the barn. The ground was soft beneath my boots, muddy from the night dew. Halfway down the slope, I stopped, cold blood and a dark streak across the grass, glistening under the gray light. Drops leading toward the orchard. I followed them without thinking, my pulse hammering so hard it blurred the edges of the world. Each drop seemed to pull me deeper into something I wasn't ready to face. By the time I reached the edge of the maple grove, the air had changed, thicker, metallic, colder. That's when I saw it, a smear of red across one of the trees. It wasn't much, but it stood out against the bark like a warning painted in haste. And beside it, half hidden by fallen leaves, lay Ethan's hat. I dropped to my knees, fingers trembling as I picked it up. The fabric was damp, warm. "Ethan?" I called, voice breaking. "If you can hear me, say something." Only the wind answered. Somewhere deeper in the orchard, a branch snapped. I froze. Then came footsteps, slow, deliberate. Not Ethan's gait. Too heavy, too certain. I ducked behind a maple trunk, heart slamming. Through the mist, I saw the outline of two men moving between the trees, one tall and lean, the other broader, wearing a dark jacket with something silver glinting at his belt. "Did you get him?" the taller one asked, voice low. "Not sure," the other replied. "He ran toward the ridge. Boss said grab the woman if she's still around." My breath caught. The ridge. They thought Ethan had gone uphill, not toward the farmhouse. That meant I had minutes, maybe seconds, before they doubled back. I turned and crept away, keeping low, the fog wrapping around me like a veil. The only sound was my pulse pounding in my ears. When I reached the barn, I slipped inside and shut the door softly behind me. The faint light that filtered through the cracks was barely enough to see. The place smelled of hay, paint, and fear. I crouched near the old workbench, trying to steady my breath. That's when I noticed something I hadn't before, a section of the floorboards that didn't match. The wood there was newer, cleaner, recently replaced. I ran my hand over the seam. One plank shifted slightly under pressure. A hidden hatch. I used a rusted wrench from the bench to pry it open. Beneath it was a small compartment wrapped in oilcloth. Inside, a metal box. My hands shook as I lifted it out. It was heavier than it looked. I set it on the bench and unlatched the lid. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, bound with twine. Joshua standing near strange industrial equipment, the maple fields in the background. Another of him beside men in hazmat suits. The photos were dated almost 4 years ago, right around the time his heart condition began. Under the stack was a flash drive identical to the one I'd already found. A note was taped to it. "If they find this, destroy it. If you find it, run." My throat tightened. "Oh, Joshua." Outside, a voice shouted, "She's in the barn." My blood turned to ice. I stuffed the new drive into my pocket, slammed the hatch shut, and sprinted to the back door. Boots thudded on the porch, the front latch rattling violently. "Come out, Mrs. Mitchell." The tall man's voice carried through the door. "You've got something that doesn't belong to you." I backed up slowly, eyes darting around the room. There, the old ladder leading to the hayloft. I grabbed it and climbed fast, trying not to breathe. From above, I could see the faint outlines of their shadows stretching under the door. Then, a crash. The door splintered open. Two men burst in, flashlights slicing through the gloom. Dust swirled in the beams. "She's here somewhere," one muttered. I crouched low behind the hay bales, holding my breath. My fingers brushed the edge of the old canvas I'd taken yesterday, the unfinished horse painting. Its frame was cracked, the back loose. I almost dropped it when I realized something rattled inside. Gently, I peeled away the back lining. A small key fell into my palm, silver, engraved with the letters MRR. Before I could think, one of the men below looked up. Up there, I bolted across the loft, jumped down onto the opposite side, landing hard on my shoulder. Pain shot up my arm, but I didn't stop. I dashed out the side door, through the open field, the cold wind biting my face. Gunfire cracked behind me. 1, 2 shots, whizzing past like angry wasps. I didn't look back. I just ran, the flash drives and key clutched tight in my coat pocket. By the time I reached the tree line, my lungs burned. I ducked behind a fallen log, forcing myself to breathe quietly. The footsteps faded, then silence. Through the fog, I saw the men retreating toward the barn, shouting something I couldn't make out. One of them kicked the door, furious. The other was on his phone. They didn't see me slip away toward the ridge. When I finally stopped running, I collapsed beside an old maple stump. The world around me was still again, too still. I pulled the silver key from my pocket and turned it in the light. On the back, faintly etched, were numbers: 19, 47 north, 1150 to W. Coordinates. Joshua's secret wasn't just buried on this land, it was somewhere else. I looked back toward the farmhouse, where smoke was beginning to curl from the broken door. The men were setting fire to it, destroying evidence, maybe, or sending a message. Tears blurred my vision, but I didn't move. I couldn't. Everything Joshua had tried to protect was unraveling, and now it was up to me to finish what he'd started. I wiped the tears with the back of my sleeve, slipped the key and flash drive safely into my pocket, and started toward the north ridge. If the coordinates were real, that was where the truth waited, and this time, I wasn't running from it. I was running to it. The men had set my husband's past on fire, but they'd made one mistake. They left me alive. And before this was over, I was going to find out exactly what Joshua buried, and why he died to keep it hidden. By the time I reached the north ridge, dawn was little more than a pale ghost behind the clouds. The air had that sharp stillness that comes before a storm. Every breath came out like smoke, and every step felt heavier than the last. Behind me, Maple Creek Farm was a shadow, its roof barely visible through the drifting fog and the thin trail of smoke still rising from the barn. I didn't let myself look back for long. There was nothing left there now but ashes and memories. Joshua had left me the coordinates for a reason, and after everything, the gunfire, the lies, Ethan's disappearance, I wasn't about to turn back now. The ridge loomed above the orchard, steep and rocky, with patches of frost clinging to the edges. My boots slipped on the incline as I climbed, grabbing roots and branches for balance. Halfway up, I stopped to catch my breath and looked down. From this height, the land spread out like a faded quilt. Fields, forest, creek, all so beautiful, so deceptively calm. The wind picked up, scattering the last of the fog. Somewhere far off, I heard a raven call. Its cry echoed like a warning. I found the first marker just before the top. A flat stone half buried in dirt. Its surface carved with the same initials as the silver key. MRR Maple runs red. I murmured under my breath. My fingers traced the grooves. They weren't fresh. Someone had carved them years ago. Maybe Joshua himself. Maybe before everything went wrong. The coordinates etched on the key had pointed here, to this ridge. And as I looked around, I realized why. A narrow clearing sat beyond the rocks, surrounded by trees whose trunks were streaked with crimson sap bleeding down the bark like veins. For a second, I thought it was paint. Then I touched one. Sticky. Sweet. Real. The maples were literally running red. I stepped into the clearing. The air was colder here, the silence thicker. In the center stood a single rusted metal post jutting from the ground, like part of some old construction site, long forgotten. Moss had grown around it, and the earth beneath was uneven. That's when I saw the edge of something metallic buried just below the dirt. I dropped to my knees and started digging with my hands. The soil was damp, clinging to my fingers. Inch by inch, I unearthed a small steel box. The same kind Joshua used for his old engineering samples. My pulse thundered as I pulled it free and brushed the dirt off the latch. The key, the silver one marked MRR, fit perfectly. It clicked open. Inside was a small external hard drive wrapped in plastic, a faded envelope, and a folded sheet of paper. My heart squeezed as I recognized Joshua's handwriting on the note. Catherine, if you've made it here, you've already seen too much and lost more than I ever meant for you to. What's buried here isn't treasure. It's truth. The data on this drive proves what Calverton did. They used Maple Creek as a dumping site, experimental waste. When I found out, I bought the land back to stop them from hiding it. They tried to buy me off. When I refused, they turned my own family against me. If you read this, promise me one thing. Don't trust anyone who offers help. They'll want to use this to destroy the evidence, not reveal it. I loved you enough to keep you out of it. I just hope you love me enough to finish what I couldn't. Joshua sat back, trembling. My husband hadn't been running from his past. He'd been fighting to expose it. My vision blurred with tears. But before I could even process it, a twig snapped behind me. I turned. A silhouette emerged from the trees. For a moment, my breath froze. The man stepped into view, his clothes torn, his arm bloodied. Ethan, I whispered. He looked exhausted, pale, limping slightly, but alive. I ran toward him. Oh my God, you're hurt. I thought. He raised a hand weakly. I'm fine, just grazed. I helped him sit on a rock, my hands shaking as I tore part of my scarf to press against his arm. They shot at you. I heard it. He nodded grimly. They wanted the drives. I managed to get away before they torched the barn. I swallowed hard. Ethan, Joshua knew about everything. The dumping, the lies. It's all here. He looked at the box in my hands, eyes darkening. Then we need to get it to the authorities. This is enough to destroy Calverton for good. His tone was firm, convincing. Too convincing. Something inside me faltered. That flicker of doubt I'd ignored before. His expensive watch. His constant appearances. Always at the right time. Joshua's warning. Don't trust anyone who offers help. I took a small step back. Who do you work for? Ethan? He blinked. What? You said Joshua saved your life. You said you were protecting me. But every time they've shown up, you already knew. You were there. Catherine, answer me. He sighed, his shoulders sagging. It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. He hesitated, then met my eyes. I was hired to keep watch on this land after Joshua died. By Calverton. But I swear to you, it wasn't supposed to go this far. When I realized what they were really after, I switched sides. I've been trying to keep you alive ever since. My stomach dropped. You worked for them? I didn't know what they'd done, he said sharply. I thought they were just trying to reclaim property. I didn't know they were covering up a crime. The wind rose between us, stirring the leaves. Give me the drive, he said gently. Let me take it somewhere safe, please. Joshua's words echoed in my mind. Don't trust anyone who offers help. I tightened my grip on the box. No. Ethan's expression shifted. Something hard, fleeting. Then, softer again. Catherine, you don't understand. If they find you with that, they'll kill you. Then they'll have to catch me first, I whispered. Without another word, I turned and ran. Ethan called after me, but I didn't look back. The hill was slick, my boots sliding on the frost as I raced down. Branches tore at my sleeves. The hard drive pressed against my ribs through the fabric of my coat. Behind me, I heard him shout my name again, angry this time. When I reached the bottom of the ridge, I didn't stop. I sprinted through the orchard, heart pounding, lungs burning. The creek shimmered ahead, and on the other side, the faint outline of the caretaker's cabin stood like a refuge. I didn't slow until I was inside, bolting the door behind me the moment I collapsed onto the floor. My phone buzzed in my pocket, one single bar of signal flickering to life. I opened it. One unread message. Unknown number. We know you found the ridge. Meet us at the Maple Creek Bridge at midnight. Alone. If you want to survive this. The message vanished seconds later, deleted remotely. I stared at the screen, my reflection shaking in the glass. Whoever sent that message knew where I was, knew what I'd found, and if I wanted answers, or to make it out alive, I'd have to walk straight into their trap. Joshua's secret was no longer buried. Now everyone wanted it. Calverton, the brothers, maybe even Ethan. But if midnight was my only chance to end this, I'd go. Because the truth was no longer what Joshua died to protect. It was what I was now willing to die for. The night felt alive. Every shadow shifted. Every whisper of wind sounded like footsteps coming closer. By the time I reached the edge of the creek, my flashlight flickered weakly, its beam cutting thin silver lines through the fog. It was almost midnight. The bridge loomed ahead, old, wooden, and worn down by years of storms. The boards creaked underfoot as the current below murmured softly, carrying the scent of wet leaves and iron. I stopped halfway across and glanced around. Nothing. Just the distant hum of crickets and the steady rhythm of my own heartbeat in my coat pocket. The hard drive felt heavier than anything I'd ever carried. Joshua's words replayed in my mind like a heartbeat of their own. Don't trust anyone who offers help. I gripped the brass key that had started it all, tracing its maple leaf engraving with my thumb. I'm here, Joshua, I whispered. Now tell me what I'm supposed to do. A twig cracked behind me. I turned sharply, flashlight slicing through the mist. Two figures stepped out of the darkness, both wearing dark coats, faces half hidden by the brim of their hats. The first one raised a hand slowly. Easy, Mrs. Mitchell. Robert, my husband's eldest brother. His voice still carried that same condescending calm he'd used at Joshua's funeral, when he'd placed a fake hand of comfort on my shoulder and whispered, "If you need anything, Catherine." I'd needed the truth, and now I finally had it. Behind him was Alan, the younger one, eyes sharp, the one who'd always smiled like he was calculating something. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Robert took a step forward. You have something that belongs to us. Us? I scoffed. You mean the company. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Joshua made mistakes. Catherine, you can't imagine the damage his lies could cause if that information got out. Lies? I snapped. He was dying, Robert. And you're calling him a liar? Alan tilted his head slightly, his tone silkier. Your husband wasn't as innocent as you think. He took something from Calverton. A formula. Property data. You don't know the full story. I took a slow step back, my flashlight beam trembling. And you do? Robert's patience cracked. You think this is about justice? It's about survival. Hand over the drive. No, he sighed. Catherine, please, don't make this difficult. You're in over your head. I could see it now. The faint glint of a pistol tucked beneath his coat. He didn't even bother to hide it. Before I could move, headlights flared in the distance, cutting through the fog like knives. A truck, tires crunching gravel. All three of us turned. The truck screeched to a stop at the end of the bridge. The door flew open, and Ethan stepped out, his arms still bandaged, his expression unreadable. Back away from her, he shouted. For a moment, everything froze. Then Robert's smirk returned. Ah, the caretaker. I should have known you'd show your face again. Ethan raised his gun, smaller, but steady. You're done, Robert. Calverton's done. I already sent copies of the evidence to the press. My heart jumped. You what? He kept his eyes on them. I told you I'd make it right, Catherine. Robert laughed, low and humorless. You think that'll save you? Those files were encrypted. Without the key, they're useless. The silver key. My hand instinctively clenched around it in my pocket. Robert saw the movement. His eyes flicked downward, and everything happened at once. He lunged forward. Ethan fired. The gunshot ripped through the night, shattering the bridge's silence. I dropped to my knees as splinters flew. Alan shouted, diving behind the railing. When I looked up, Ethan was bleeding, shoulder hit again, but still standing. Robert's weapon had skidded across the planks, disappearing into the dark water below. Alan cursed under his breath, then turned to run toward the truck. Stop him, Ethan gasped, pressing his hand to the wound. I scrambled to my feet and sprinted after Alan, the bridge shaking beneath me. He reached the truck door, but before he could start it, I swung my flashlight with all the strength I had left. It struck the side of his head with a sickening crack. He crumpled, dazed but breathing. The engine sputtered as I fumbled the keys from the ignition and threw them into the creek. My whole body trembled with adrenaline. When I turned back, Ethan was slumped against the bridge rail, pale but conscious. You shouldn't have come, I said breathlessly. He managed a faint smile. You would have done the same. I knelt beside him, tearing another strip of fabric from my coat to press against his wound. You sent the files? He nodded weakly. Half an hour ago, I copied them from the first drive you found. The rest is in the one you're holding. They can't cover it up anymore. Robert groaned nearby, clutching his side. You idiots. You have no idea what you've unleashed. I glared at him. What you unleashed was poison in the ground where we planted our lives. He spat blood. It's bigger than you think. Bigger than any of us. Then his head dropped back, motionless. I checked for a pulse. Faint, but there. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, growing louder. Someone must have heard the shots. I helped Ethan to his feet. Come on. We have to get out of here before they twist this. We crossed to the far side of the bridge, stumbling together through the trees. The creek ran below us like a silver ribbon. carrying away the last of the maple leaves. And with them, maybe, the ghosts that had haunted this land for years. We reached the edge of the road just as the first police lights flashed behind us. Painting the fog red and blue, Ethan stopped, breathing hard. They'll find the brothers. They'll find the drives. And what about us? I asked. He looked at me with something like relief and guilt. That depends on whether you're ready to tell them everything. The question hung between us like the mist. I pulled out Joshua's letter, now soft from being folded and refolded 100 times. I looked down at his handwriting, then back toward the chaos at the bridge. For him, I whispered. For the truth. Ethan nodded. Then we tell them everything. But just as we turned toward the flashing lights, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. A single text. You think this ends with Calverton? Look deeper. Maple Creek was only one sight. The message vanished. Again. I stared at the screen until the sirens drowned out everything else. Joshua's secret was only the beginning. If Maple Creek was just one of many, then the truth was far larger and far deadlier than I'd ever imagined. And before this was over, I'd have to decide whether exposing it would cost me my life or finally set his soul free. Morning came gray and hollow, like the world had been drained of color overnight. I sat on the tailgate of an ambulance at the edge of the Maple Creek Bridge, my hands wrapped around a paper cup of bitter coffee. The taste didn't matter. It was the warmth I needed. Police swarmed the scene. Yellow tape stretched across the bridge like a scar. Reporters were already gathering beyond the roadblocks, their voices carrying faintly through the cold. Every few seconds, a camera flash flickered against the fog. Robert and Alan Mitchell were in custody. One wounded, the other silent as stone. Ethan was inside the medic's van, getting his shoulder cleaned and bandaged. And I was answering questions. Too many of them. Mrs. Mitchell, Detective Harris said gently, his notepad balanced on his knee. We just need to confirm again. You're saying your husband's brothers were working with the company, Calverton Industrial? Yes, I said, my voice steady now, though my throat ached. Joshua found out they were using his old farmland as a chemical testing site. Waste disposal. He bought it back to stop them. They wanted it returned before anyone found out. The detective nodded slowly, his pen scratching across the paper. And you found proof? I reached into my coat and handed him the small steel box, the one from the ridge. Everything's in there. Data drives, records, his notes. He opened the lid and whistled softly. You realize this is enough to launch a federal investigation. I know, I said quietly. That's why I'm giving it to you. My husband died keeping that secret. I won't let it die with him. He studied me for a moment, then nodded and stood. You did the right thing, Mrs. Mitchell. We'll protect you from here. When he walked away, I turned my gaze back toward the water. The creek ran steady beneath the bridge, calm now, as if last night hadn't happened at all. But for me, nothing felt calm. Not yet. Ethan joined me a few minutes later, his arm in a fresh sling, his face pale but alive. They're saying the drives went public, he said softly. The press already picked it up. Calverton stocks are collapsing. The board's being investigated. I nodded. Good. He looked at me for a long moment. You should know. I'm leaving, Catherine. Once this hits full scale, it won't be safe here. Not for me. Maybe not for you either. I'm not running anymore, I said. I ran from his secrets long enough. I'm staying until every part of the truth is out. He smiled faintly. You've got more courage than I ever did. I just have more to lose, I said softly. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small, a photograph, folded and creased. I found this in the glove compartment of the truck, he said, handing it to me. It was a picture of Joshua and me on our wedding day, young, laughing, sun in our eyes. But behind us, almost hidden, was a wooden sign nailed to the barn wall. The words read, Maple Creek, for tomorrow's children. I swallowed hard. He meant for this to be more than just ours. He meant for it to last, Ethan said quietly. And now it will. He turned to go, but I caught his sleeve. Ethan, thank you for everything. He hesitated. Don't thank me yet. There's still more you'll find. Calverton wasn't lying about one thing. Maple Creek wasn't the only site. What do you mean? I asked, my stomach tightening. He looked over his shoulder toward the horizon, where the fields stretched endless and pale. Joshua's notes. He mentioned others, other farms, other names. If you keep looking, you'll see it too. Before I could say anything else, he walked away, disappearing into the trees like he'd come from them, quiet, ghost-like, unfinished. I sat there for a long time after he was gone, the photograph trembling in my hand. Then I noticed something I hadn't before. In the bottom corner, scrawled faintly in Joshua's handwriting, were 3 words. Find the rest. I pulled out my phone. A new email notification blinked across the screen. Unknown sender. No subject line. Just a single link and a message. You opened one door. Now open the others. My pulse quickened. My instinct screamed no. But my heart, that part of me that still heard Joshua's voice, whispered yes. I clicked. A map appeared, red as scattered across the Midwest, stretching from Canada down to Texas. Beside each one, the initials MRR glowed faintly. Maple runs red. This was bigger than one farm, bigger than one family. Joshua hadn't just stumbled onto corruption. He'd uncovered a nationwide network of testing grounds hidden in plain sight. And somehow, I'd inherited the key to all of it. I stood and looked one last time at the land that had started it all. The maple trees swayed gently in the morning wind, their red leaves drifting like drops of blood across the soil. I'll find them, I said aloud. All of them. The words echoed over the creek, swallowed by the mist. As I walked toward my car, I passed one of the young officers holding the drive. He nodded respectfully, unaware that what he held was only the beginning. I climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine. The hum of it vibrated through the silence. My hands rested for a moment on the steering wheel, then tightened. I wasn't just a widow anymore. I was the keeper of my husband's legacy, the protector of truth he died for. And I wasn't done. As the tires rolled over the gravel road and the farmhouse disappeared behind me, I could almost hear Joshua's voice again, gentle and certain. Promise me you'll never go to the farm. A sad smile touched my lips. I did more than that. Joshua, I whispered. I went, and I set it free. The fog thinned as the first rays of sunlight broke over the ridge. Ahead of me, the world stretched wide, dangerous, unknown, but mine to face. Some secrets bury themselves in soil, waiting for courage to dig them up. Joshua kept his to protect the world he loved. I unearthed them to heal it. And maybe that's what love truly is. Not hiding the truth to keep someone safe, but facing it so they'll never have to live in its shadow again.